It's Friday, so let's end the week with my favorite cannabis story from my 15 years of reading about this plant. And it's so funny, and it goes to show how differently it can affect everyone, and you never know what's going to happen. I'm Lex Pelger. I do can education for CV Sciences, the makers of Plus CBD, who has excellent CBD and THC products, and also likes to have a good time. This account comes from probably the 1830s or so. We don't have an exact date. But as far as the feeling of the time, it might be a little bit like the early 60s and psychedelics, because around that time, most people didn't know about psychedelics outside of some small groups of researchers and some small underground people. But when people took psychedelics at that time, they didn't have a big expectation of what was going to happen. There wasn't a bunch of cultural programming around it. And the same thing was true for hashish in the 1830s, because this account comes from Dr. William O'Shaughnessy himself, who is credited as bringing medical cannabis from India to the attention of Western science. He first wrote about it in 1839, and not only did he talk about the physiological effects of cannabis, he also talked about all of the native doctors that he learned wisdom from and how to use cannabis, and also he talked about people who just used it on themselves. And so this is his story from some students. So some of O'Shaughnessy's medical students decided to take hashish as an auto-experiment to see what it would feel like to take this medicine. And so according to his account, a retiring lad of excellent habits ingested it, and then 20 minutes afterwards led to the most amusing effects I have ever witnessed. I found him enacting the part of a Raja, giving orders to his courtiers. He could recognize none of his fellow students or acquaintances. All to his mind seemed as altered as his own condition. He spoke of many years having passed since his student days, described his teachers and friends with a piquancy which a dramatist would envy. He detailed the adventures of an imaginary series of years, his travels, his attainment of wealth and power. He entered on discussions on religious, scientific, and political topics with astonishing eloquence, and disclosed an extent of knowledge, reading, and a ready wit, which those who knew him best were altogether unprepared for. For 3 hours and upwards, he maintained the character he had first assumed, and with a degree of ease and dignity perfectly becoming his high situation. A scene more interesting it would be difficult to imagine. It terminated nearly as rapidly as it commenced, and no headache, sickness, or other unpleasant symptom followed the innocent excess. If hash has ever turned you into a Raja, know that you're not alone.